Hi, I'm James and welcome to the HSS studio, where we will be creating how-to videos for all things DIY. And in this video, we are going to master wall paneling. From planning your layout and achieving those perfect cuts, to discussing the best materials to use, and a full step-by-step guide to that professional high-end finish. Right, let's run through the tools and materials we'll need to apply panel moulding to a wall. Everything we're using today is available for you to buy or hire from HSS DIY through our website, hss.com. Decorative moulding, grab adhesive, wood filler or caulk, sandpaper 120 grit and 180 grit for smoothing joints, primer and paint to finish the wood, mitre box and tenon saw for manual precision cuts at 45 degrees, electric mitre saw, the pro choice for making perfectly clean, repeatable 45-degree angles, a spirit level or laser level, absolutely essential to ensure your boxes are perfectly level and plumb. A tape measure for the measure twice cut once rule, combination square to mark accurate 45 and 90-degree lines, a caulking gun to apply the adhesive and the decorator's caulk, hammer and lost head nails or a brad nailer to hold the moulding in place while the adhesive sets, and a pencil for marking your calculated layout on the wall. We recommend you look at hiring these through our website to keep project costs to a minimum. Right, now we know what we need to get started, let's introduce Kim, our panelling expert, who is going to help demonstrate and give us some great tips so that we can all achieve that pro finish at home. Kim, thank you so much for joining us today in the HSS studio. Now, we're going to be talking and doing all things panelling today, aren't we?
Yes, so panelling's really popular in the UK at the moment, and there's two designs that are most popular, which is the shaker design and the traditional moulding design. Okay. And today we're going to be...
picture frame? That's
the picture frame look, and that is what we're going to be creating today in the studio.
Fantastic, I'm really looking forward to it. To create a professional looking panel moulding feature, you need to be meticulous with your layout. This style is usually separated from the top half of the wall by a dado rail, which we're also installing today. So let's see how we map out our panelling. So where exactly do we start?
Okay, so that's the number one thing that people get stuck on, James. And in a standard house, generally speaking, when you're applying wood panelling, this type of wood panelling on a wall, we would tend to go so that it sits approximately a metre high or 100 centimetres. Now, if we just focus on this wall, for example, we know that this wall is a 4-metre wall.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, the magic number for margins when applying this type of panelling is 10 centimetres or 100 millimetres. So what that means is that the gaps between the skirting boards to the panelling is going to be 10 centimetres, and likewise from the dado rail that we're going to apply to the top to the panelling is also going to be 10 centimetres. Either end, we're not going to start the panelling until 10 centimetres away from the edge of the wall and the gaps in between. So based on this wall, and say if we want to have sort of 3 picture frames, for example, we know that we're going to need 2 gaps either side and 2 in the middle.
And those gaps are 10 centimetres?
And those gaps are 10 centimetres.
Kim, so we've measured our wall and it is 4 metres, so what do we do next?
Okay, so now if we translate that into centimetres, because we've already talked about the gaps that we need in between the picture frames, so we know that 10 centimetres, and we need 4 times 10 centimetres, which is 40. Yeah, so if we translate 4 metres into centimetres, we know that's 400. Yes. So we now need to deduct 40 from 400.
Which is 360.
And now we divide that by 3.
Which is 120.
Well done.
Just about got that. Okay, 120, right.
And so now we know that each picture frame on this wall is 120 centimetres.
Perfect.
But now we're going to look at the rest of the room as well. So over here, we have this wall over here, and we have this tiny section over here. So what we want to do is make sure that the wood panelling flows throughout the room. Okay. We don't want nice rectangular picture frames over here and then shorter squares over here. So now we're going to measure this wall and see what this translates to, and this section, and we're going to apply exactly the same methods, and we're going to work out what the sizing is and how that translates to this wall.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, 4 metres.
Perfect.
Okie doke.
So
and
we
then
know
did you say we're going to measure this?
Yeah, so we know we can actually have the same size picture frames on this wall. Okay. Now we've got this tiny section here. So if we measure from edge to edge, it's 43.
43?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's really down to personal preference.
Yep.
Obviously on these walls we've decided to go for a more sort of rectangular picture frame appearance. So in this section here, it's down to we could leave it blank or we can put a nice little picture frame, which is probably what we're going to do today.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to write these measurements down before I forget them, okay?
Yeah.
Our first move is to set the dado rail. Now this acts as our primary level line and creates the top frame for the rest of the wall, ensuring every panel we hang below it stays perfectly square. So we've got our measurements, so I guess we can just get straight to cutting?
Nope, absolutely not.
Okay, right, I'll slow down.
We need to first figure out where we're going to put our dado rail on the wall.
Okay.
So generally speaking, people tend to go for a metre high, but there's a few things that you need to consider. If you've got a picture rail. So if you've got a picture rail, you need to see where that is and give yourself enough gap at the top, because for things like pictures, mirrors that you might want to put on the wall.
Okay.
Some people prefer panelling to be slightly lower,
Yep.
but today we're going to base it on the fact that we're going to go 1 metre high.
We're just going to measure 1 metre from the floor then?
Well, obviously we haven't got our true height of our flooring here, so what we need to do is discover that first. So we're going to put this piece of flooring down, and also this skirting board. There we go. Okay, so now we know what our true height of our floor is. We can now measure from the floor up to the wall 1 metre high.
Perfect, sounds good. Okay, so I'm going to mark 1 metre up from from our flooring.
Yep.
Okey-doke. So if I just put a mark there, and this is going to be top of the dado rail?
So that's going to be where the top of your dado rail is going to be positioned. So what I would do is we know today that we're using a 6 centimetre dado rail.
Okay.
So I would just put a tiny mark 6 centimetres below.
Yep. So that gives us the width of our dado rail, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Yeah.
So now we know that we've got a 6 centimetre dado rail on the wall. What I like to do is, now we talked about our 10 centimetre gap, so that's going to be positioned from the top and the bottom.
Okay.
So I would just mark 10 centimetres from there and 10 centimetres from the skirting board up.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
And then it's just down to personal preference now. We can take a step back, we can make sure that we're sort of happy with where the dado rail is situated on our wall, the gaps, and sort of almost the height of the wood panelling.
Okay, so Kim, we've got our first 1 metre mark from the floor. So I'm just going to go across the rest of the floor and measure 1 metre and just put a few more marks in the wall.
So I wouldn't advise that, because in most houses floors are often out.
Makes
so
sense.
what I would do is you can either use a laser level, which is what we have here.
Yes.
And this will give you a nice straight line. Or if you don't have a laser level, you can also use a spirit level. So now that we've got our central point here, which we know is 1 metre high, we would use our spirit level to basically measure across the wall to make sure it's level. And I would just use 2 or 3 points across the room, just mark off where that top of that dado rail is going to be situated.
Nice.
So if I do, using this laser level mark here,
Yep.
we can see that if I put a mark here, that's going to be 1 metre high.
Yep.
And then if you'd like to do, you can do the same.
Thank
on the
you.
other
So we
side.
don't need to draw a great big line across the whole room then, do we?
No.
Okay. And then of course we're going to do the same markings on this wall as well.
Yes. So
Okay.
if we mark it over here,
Yep.
and we can mark over here as well.
Yep.
And maybe just put one on the edge here, because we're going to need to go around the window.
Okay.
And then just on this side as well. So if we put one here.
Yep.
Okay. There we go.
Are there any sort of final checks or steps that we can do just to make sure that those markings are fine and we're happy to move forward to cutting?
Yes, so what would be a good idea is to just double check your marks, make sure they are level. So what you can do is, if we get your piece of dado rail here, and we'll always start off in the corner of the room. So if you place that there for me, James, and now we're going to put the spirit level. So I think we need to raise it up slightly your side.
Yeah.
Right, here we go. And then you could always mark it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we're just making sure that those original markings that we put in are correct.
That's right.
Aren't we, by doing that? Why are we going to cut this? Because this is shorter than the wall that we're working on, isn't it? Why exactly would we cut this piece?
Well, we need to butt up another piece of dado rail to it.
Okay.
Now, if we were to just attach another piece of dado rail just like this, then the finish of it's not going to be that great.
Okay.
So what I would always advise is we cut at a 45-degree angle.
Yep.
And also bearing in mind that most walls aren't straight and they may have a little belly in them.
Yep.
So if we do that, it will sit more flush and it'll give a nice finish.
Okay, right, let's get cutting then. So before we scare any of the viewers off at home, we don't need a chop saw for this. A mitre box is absolutely fine, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but because we've got a bigger room, we've got bigger walls, we've got quite a lot of cuts to make.
Yes.
In the interest of time and just because I think it's cool, we've been over to hss.com and we've got ourselves a chop saw for hire. It is also going to make cutting on angles a little bit easier as well, isn't it?
It certainly is, yes.
Perfect. And in terms of PPE, what do we need?
So, like with any power tool, I would always advise that you wear ear defenders because they can get pretty noisy.
Okay.
Some eye protection in case any bits of wood kick up, and gloves as well, just to avoid any splinters.
Okay, luckily we've got all that here.
Before you start cutting anything, you just need to remember which side the dado rail's butting up to the wall. So on this side, it's going to go in that in the corner of the room, so we don't need to do any cuts on there.
Okay.
This is the side in which it's going to meet the extended dado rail over here. So today what we're going to do is we're going to cut a 45-degree angle, and then on the next piece we're going to cut a 45-degree angle the other way, so they sandwich together.
Nice, and then they'll butt up and we'll get a nicer finish.
Yes.
Perfect, sounds good, let's do it. Okay, Kim, so ear defenders are off, we can hear each other again.
Yes.
We've made our cuts and now we are ready to stick our dado rail on the wall. Is this a pretty straightforward process then?
Yeah, very straightforward. So we're going to attach our first piece of dado rail, and you can use any grab adhesive.
Okay.
And when you apply the grab adhesive onto the dado rail, we do it in a zigzag manner all the way down so it's nice and even.
Okay, that's the next step.
That's the next step.
Okay, let's do that then, shall we?
Yeah, so we just do a nice smooth line. We don't want it on too thick.
Okay.
We do a nice circle at the end. And this just offers a bit of suction onto the wall as well.
Okay.
We've got these marks.
Yes.
So that's going to be the top of the dado rail.
Yep.
So now we want to position it to the end of the wall like so. Okay. There we go. How are we looking?
Yeah, that's bang on.
That good?
Yeah. Okay, Kim, so I reckon a couple of nails just to make sure it's secured in place, yeah?
That's right.
Okay.
So we're going to use the nail gun.
So, we've used a nail gun there, Kim. We don't need to use a nail gun though, do we? We can use a hammer and nails.
Yes, absolutely. This is a great piece of equipment, and if you're going to be doing a lot of panelling, it might be worth investing in a nail gun.
Yep.
However, hammer and nail is absolutely fine. It's more to help with the suction of the panelling onto the wall. So today I used the nail gun and I angled it up at a 45-degree, just purely so that you don't see the nails as much.
I wondered why you're doing that. That makes absolute sense, and you're absolutely right. You can't see them, can you?
No.
Kim, I really enjoyed that. I don't know what I was so worried about. Once we started going, I felt like it was a really nice process. We did have a tricky corner. I think I was right to be a bit apprehensive about that corner.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the great thing about paneling is it's a really quick project. It's a quick win. Generally speaking, at home, you know, we won't come across angles like this as such. And they do take a little bit more time. Generally, angles in most rooms are 45 degree. But yeah, it's a fantastic project, and even just having the dado rail on the wall, it just brings the room to life a little bit more. Just double check your measurements twice, even 3 times if necessary, just to make sure it's right.
Brilliant. Preparation really is everything here. By batch cutting our mouldings ahead of time, we're not just keeping the workspace cleaner, we're ensuring that every single panel is identical. Now, we might run into a few tricky custom cuts once we hit the corners or the radiator pipes, but getting the bulk of the work done now means the assembly will be fast and precise.
So now we're going to build our picture frames on the wall.
Okay.
So we've already established beforehand that the wall's 4 metres. Yes. And we took away the gaps, which we realised there was 4 gaps of 40 centimetres, which left us with 360. Yes. Divided it by 3, which is 120. Yeah. So now we just need to measure everything out. So we're going to leave a 10 centimetre gap here. Okay. Okay.
This is your magic number that you mentioned
at the start. That's a magic number.
Yes.
And we're going to mark out 120. Okay. Then another 10 centimetre gap.
Yeah.
And then
120.
Another
I see
120. 10 centimetre gap. Yeah. Finally, and if our maths is right, there we go. That looks great to me, with another 10 centimetre gap. So we know that all our picture frames are going to be even throughout the wall. Okay, so now what we need to establish is the height of the picture frames. Okay. So we now have our dado rail in place. Yep. So we can measure 10 centimetres from our dado rail. Yep. And 10 centimetres from the skirting board, which is here. And then simply measure from both markings, which is 62 centimetres. Okay. Okay, so we now know we have 3 picture frames going across this wall, and we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we need 6 lengths at 62 centimetres. Okay, and that's the same process for the other wall? Absolutely the same process. So we established beforehand that that is approximately 4 metres as well. Yes. So same process. Perfect, so we've got some cutting to do. Yes, we do. Let's get through it. Okay, so obviously now we're going to build the picture frames, and we've got a profile here, and this thicker edge is always going to be on the outside. So just one thing to bear in mind is when you're cutting into angles, that will always cut in from the outer edge inwards. So it'll be this side like here, and then 45 degrees this way. Perfect. And then when you put it on the chop saw, you're going to cut to the laser onto the edge, and you can cut 45 degrees this way. Yeah. And then just a quick tip, just go that way there, and then we can do that side. It just saves you having to move the chop saw back and forth.
It feels like we're making real progress now, and it's time to apply the pre-cut pieces to our walls. So let's see how our preparation pays off. So same as before, obviously we don't have as much room to zigzag, but we're just making sure we've got a good line of adhesive anyway, aren't we?
Yeah, good line of adhesive, just try and get towards the edges here. Yep. Okay, so we're going to start attaching the panelling. Just press down, and then we're going to use our spirit level to check that we are. Perfect.
It's always good to double check, I suppose, as we go, isn't it? We've done our markings, but at least you're making sure that should be right.
Yeah, that's perfect. I would always, as well, when you're attaching picture frames, is to start from the top. Okay. Because if there is any discrepancies, you're less likely to see it at the bottom. There we go. Would you like to attach that side?
Can indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and there we have our first picture frame.
Look at that! It makes such a big difference, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? So I think you could now put one nail there, and then that will mean it requires like less corking at the
Okay.
end. So we do that.
Right, we've got 2 more to go. Should we get cracking?
Yep, let's get cracking.
Nice. So we've finished our 2 feature walls and we have now come to our problem corner. So what do we do with this corner? What are our options?
Well, we could leave it as it is,
Yep.
because bearing in mind at the moment we're seeing the beading, but this is going to be primed and painted, so it will not be so much of, it won't draw the eye really.
Okay.
However, to finish it off, we could use the same principles as before.
Yep.
So we could attach some beading using the 10 centimetre gaps
Yes.
from the dado rail to where we're going to start the beading,
Yep.
and then again from the skirting board, and then we just measure from these edges here, and then just creating a very small picture frame.
I think that's a really good idea and it'll tie it into the 2 walls.
Yes.
So let's finish it off, shall we?
Yes.
Once the installation is complete, the panelling looks like it's done, but there is an extra step which will make the panels look like they're part of the wall rather than just stuck on. So let's see how we achieved that professional finish. So I thought we were finished because our walls look absolutely amazing, but I see you've got a cork gun in your hand, you've got some blue gloves on and you've given me some as well, so I'm assuming we've still got a couple more steps to go.
Yeah, just a couple of more steps
Okay.
just to get that final finish.
Nice.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go along the top of the dado rail
Okay.
with some cork.
Yep.
So I've got a cork gun, and basically we're just going to put a very thin layer. You don't need loads, just a very thin layer across the top, and this is what the gloves are for. And we're just going to basically push the cork along the top of the dado rail just to seal all of those gaps.
Nice.
Okay, so we're
Sounds
going to
good.
start off in this corner here, and we're going to place the nozzle into the corner,
Okay.
and we are only going to put a very thin layer along the top.
Okay.
Okay.
And you're just making sure that you're moving across at a sort of steady speed,
Steady,
aren't you there?
a steady speed, all the way across. And I'd probably stop about here,
Yep.
because then now what we can do is we can start to push it along.
Nice. Oh, look at that.
Yeah,
That looks really nice.
nice and slowly.
Yep.
Then it just gives a nice finish. Again, just a very thin layer, nice and slowly.
Yep. Thank you so much for joining us today in the HSS studio. I can't believe how much we've managed to transform the studio just in one day. So very quickly, a couple of bits I want to mention really quickly are that I think it's really important that you get your maths right initially, because then it makes everything else easier a bit later, doesn't it? And also that 10 centimetre rule which worked for our studio today.
Absolutely. So it works for our studio. It might not work for every room.
Okay,
So just assess your area, assess the room, work out your maths, work what your sort of margin's going to be,
Yep.
and go from there. Use the methodical approach. We had our way of doing it today,
Yep.
but you'll find your own way.
Yeah. Well, I think it looks amazing. I've really enjoyed myself. I feel really confident going forward in my own home. So once again, thank you for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you.
Well, we said we were going to show you how to wood panel like a pro, and Kim has really delivered. This project looks stunning, but more importantly, I'm sure, like me, you'll now be super confident in taking on that blank wall at home and making it look incredible. So just remember, symmetry is king. If your wall ends with a 5 centimetre gap on one side and a 15 centimetre gap on the other, it will look off, so always calculate from the centre of the wall and work outwards. Laser over level. A spirit level is great, but a laser level, which can be hired from HSS, allows you to see the entire room's alignment at once, ensuring that your panels wrap around the room perfectly. Don't sand the cork. Remember, you can sand filler, but you cannot sand cork, so make sure your corking is perfect while it's wet. And always remember, HSS is here to support your project from start to finish. Research, support, buying, and hiring the tools for all your DIY needs.